Thank you so much, Alicia, and good afternoon, and welcome to our attendees in the United States and all around the world. My name is Enrique Garcia Sayan. I am the current chair of the American Society of Echo Twitter Journal Club subgroup, hashtag ASEchoJC. And I'm delighted to moderate this exciting webinar where we've invited 4 social media experts and notable members of our journal club group to discuss their different perspectives on how social media has helped them learn, educate others, and in their careers in general, as well as to provide useful tips and tricks on how to get engaged into our Twitter journal club. We'll be taking questions from the audience, and hopefully we'll have a good discussion at the end of the talks. So be sure to enter your question in the Q&A tab in the Zoom window. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker of the evening. Dr. Purvi Parwani is an assistant professor of medicine and the director of Women's Health Clinic at Loma Linda University. She is an early career chair for the Society of Cardiac Magnetic Resonance and has been involved in numerous ASC initiatives. Notably, she just got elected to be at the next cohort of the ASC Leadership Academy, so congratulations. She's an outstanding multimodality imager, but also a Twitter extraordinaire. She's very well known in social media and has had several publications in that regard. And she's going to tell us about her own journey with social media and how it has helped her shape her career and educate others. Purvi?
Thank you. Okay, now this is the correct slides, but sorry about that. And this is my introduction to social media to all of you through my personal journey. And these are my disclosures, and my disclosure about if I hurt anyone, please apologize. I apologize in advance. So the objectives for my talk today are we are going to speak about social media tools that we have in cardiology, learn about the benefits of social media, particularly for personal branding, and also learn about what are the implications of the content that we build on social media. So if we look at the world before social media, it was very different. We all communicated very differently, but particularly if we look now in the cardiovascular space, it's the Twitter where most of the community has come together, including the leaders, including the organizations, as well as the journals. So on the Twitter, how to make a tweet, I just have this one slide for all of you. It's important to recognize all the tool sets that you can utilize just within that 280 character microblog. So if you look at the first arrow right here, this is where you can insert photo or video. You also have an option to insert a poll. Of course, we are imagers. So for us, this first photo or video option is very important because we know that the social media content that has photo or video has high engagement. Then you can also mention a user by using the hashtag sign and then using the username. And that username can be an organization like ASC 360, or it can be a journal, or it can be a user. Then last but not the least, hashtag is kind of the meta tag that creates the history of anyone that uses that meta tag before. So if you go to CV Imaging or Echo First, you'll be able to see all the content that has been created with that. And more importantly, you won't miss anything within that area. So these are kind of the tools. We describe this further in our paper that was written for social media use in cardiac imaging. So check it out. So I think this was, I was asked to kind of discuss my personal journey and what all I have learned. So I have 5 lessons for all of you guys in this brief presentation. So the first is always remember that if you're branding for yourself or you're branding for an organization or a journal or whatever your role may be, as a social media ambassador for any organization, content is the key. That this is where your audience will keep coming back to you. So I have shared this example of the content back in the day that I created, and this is something related to echo. So this was a case of a mitral regurgitation, and I described in detail how in this particular very challenging echo, I was able to determine what the patient's etiology for mitral regurgitation was. So this is kind of a thread that I developed on Twitter using my tweets and images. And so this is known as Editorial. So this is one way to display your content, particularly within the echo area, since it's hard to explain everything in one tweet. So we know that content is, of course, useful for education, but content that you are developing, and depending on what it is, it can also be useful for advocacy. It can be useful for organization. It can be useful for journals and conferences to increase their reach. Of course, it can be useful to get into the community. So here, perhaps we are talking about the Echo First community. And if you create the content repeatedly, you will see the other educators that are creating this content, and you can also network with them. So again, check out this white paper that we wrote for Jack back in the day, and it kind of describes how the social media here, the content on social media can be useful to you. So I always show this slide because this to me is very important. So when you are branding yourself as an educator or for any other organization, it is very important to just not do promotion of yourself. So, right, so your audience is coming for the free content that you create, whether it is advocacy, whether it is education. So you can do 80% of the content that is useful to you and use that content very wisely, and perhaps do 20% of this promotional content where you, show the audience what exactly you are doing, if there is a new achievement in your career or you have published something new, etc. So this 80-20 rule generally is very important to remember. So I give you this example where I kind of, used my content here, not only for promotion, but also for education at the same time. So I was a social media ambassador for ASC in 2020, and I wanted to advertise the Chalk Talks on Doppler. So what I did was I found the slides that I had created for my fellows, for fellow education between, the Doppler differences between MR and AS. And on the right side, it was for the hepatic vein and the pulmonary hypertension findings. I displayed those slides. I gave my audience some educational point, but at the end, I said that you can come to our Chalk Talks on Doppler, which I was not giving. I was promoting this for ASC, but come to this Chalk Talks, and they are on Saturday between 1:30 to 2 p.m. So you can kind of combine both this. If you deliver your educational content and combine the promotional content with that, there are high chances that audience perhaps would be more interested in what you have to say wherever you are presenting. So for the, how we can use social media for educational purposes, we wrote this paper. So check it out. It was published in Heart, earlier this year. But basically, why social media is useful is because there is, when you are an educator, there is higher retention rate if you're trying to teach something to others using, these educational examples. And of course, there is rapid dissemination of the content, of the knowledge in real time. And most importantly, all this content is asynchronous, meaning it's not tied by time, location, or place, or person. Anyone on the other side of the world in the middle of night, if they're on night float and they want to see some educational content, can reach to what you have created before and learn from that. So the learning here is very asynchronous, and it's not bound by time, place, person, or any price, because all of this content created by educators is free. So the second lesson that I have for all of you is that it's good to be important, but it's more important to be good. And this is in general life lesson that my parents taught me, but this is way more important in social media because you're branding yourself to the audience that doesn't know you. And this is your brand that you are, creating. So just make sure to be honest, reflect respect always when speaking to other colleagues or even to the general public, because there may be patients there may be organizations there. Do not steal the content, and do not use any offensive or demeaning remarks. Stay professional and always reciprocate. And what I mean by reciprocate is small little favors like likes and retweets. If you resonate with some content, make sure to reciprocate when your colleagues tag you into it, etc. So we talk about this again in a JAC case report paper that we wrote. The third lesson that I have for all of you is it's social media. So remember, although we are using it here for educational purposes, to build this communities, it's important to be part of this community. It's important to be social. And you'll hear differing responses on this. But to me, this is very important. This is how part of the fun that I have on social media, because I have found my community, I've found my friends I've found the people that I vibe with. So it's okay to be a little social, to show how much fun you are having with your colleagues in the community that we have created virtually. It's okay to showcase your hobbies. It's okay to showcase a little bit of you. This is not a journal that you are writing for, or a website of an organization that you're writing for. This is your page. This is your opportunity to showcase your brand. So it is okay to be social here. The lesson 4 that I have for all of you is remember that everyone is always watching you. So I give you this example. Leonard Bailey was the surgeon who did first pediatric transplant, and he was at my institute, a very landmark surgeon, and he died at age 76 from a cancer. And I had posted about his death and kind of giving him a tribute on my social media page, which next day was cited in LA Times. So this was very surprising to me that, my tweet the following day was picked up by LA Times. But this just goes on to tell you how much reach social media has. And, everyone is always watching you. And this is a happy example where my tribute was displayed in a, major newspaper. But it's important to remember that whatever you write, can be picked up by your organization or by a lawyer. So, and that brings me to the very important part of, social media, where we are displaying the patient cases. And, remember that by HIPAA Act, even if you have hidden all the patient information on a case, that's not enough by HIPAA. And patient identification can be made, just with the content that you are, if it is imaging content, it can be made. And that's the argument most of the lawyers will make. So at Loma Linda, I'm the social media director for our faculty medical group. And we have created this very easy consent form, which I will really encourage you to use every time you are sharing patient information on social media, whether it is an echo clip that you want to get opinion of your colleagues on, or, it is something else. Just make sure that if you are sharing patient information, get the consent, because the de-identification is not enough by the court of law in United States to de-identify. It's also important to review your institutional policy. There are many examples where individuals have lost their job due to their social media content, and you don't want to add to one of those examples. So always remember, everyone is watching you, whether it is your patients, whether it is your organization, or pharmaceutical companies, or your colleagues on social media. So there is a happy side to it. And unfortunately, there is a very dark side to it as well. The number 5 that I have is the most important probably, which is digital detox is self-care. So social media is very addicting, and that's why it is linked to depression and burnout. So these are my little tips for you, which I practice in my own life. It's good to turn off the push notifications, set up the time limits, and also make sure to use the social media time limits, so that on when you have your time off, you don't use social media. And also, if you think that you're following someone who is constantly negative and perhaps not very respectful to the colleagues, I would tell you that it's okay to clean your social media account and perhaps not follow those people. And to me, the way I use social media is when I wake up after my exercise, I go on social media before going to work. At work, I don't try to look generally, and then in the evening I'll catch up, but I don't use the phone 1 hour 1 hour before going to bed. So this is my social media journey. I think that most of this happened, in my opinion, perhaps because I had branded myself since a fellow when Twitter was still starting out, and got very lucky, to be visible and to be seen by the right people at the right time. So with that, I conclude my talk, and thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Purvi. That was outstanding. I mean, we have a lot to learn from you. I just checked, and you have 29,000 followers on Twitter, so you must be doing something right. Very important to remember the power of social media, but also how to use it appropriately. Our next speaker will provide the sonographer's perspective. Kelly Beagle is the clinical lead sonographer for the pediatric echo lab at Starship Children's Hospital in Auckland, New Zealand, and she's actually joining us from the other side of the world. She volunteers within her field, and she's an active volunteer with the American Society of Cardiology, as well as the Cardiac Society of Australia and New Zealand. She is a member of our Twitter Journal Club subgroup, and she's going to provide her and the sonographer's perspective how to get involved with our Twitter Journal Club. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm very happy to be here today. I'll share my slides with everybody. Okay. All right. Hello, my name is Kelly Beagle, and I will be talking about the sonographer's perspective to the ASE Echo Journal Club. I would like to thank the ASE for inviting me to participate in this webinar. I have no disclosures. Getting more involved in conversations in the echo world can seem overwhelming and impossible. You may feel timid, too shy to insert your voice, or that you may be criticized. I had feelings like this when I first joined, but let me tell you a little bit about how that came about. In 2018, I was part of the ASE Global Outreach event in Morgantown, West Virginia. While there, I met Dr. Ritu, who raved about the cardio Twitter world and strongly recommended that I join Twitter. I was reluctant at first, but Ritu thoroughly encouraged me to be a part of that. Once you are part of Twitter, you can immerse yourself in many interesting cases that are tweeted from all over the world. You will see things that you may not have seen personally, and you can definitely learn a thing or two. There are always tweets and threads related to new research and publications to keep you updated. And then there is a growing trend to have Twitter moderators or social media representatives from various conferences from around the world to promote sessions and encourage conference attendance, as well as keep the conference attendees and those unable to attend up to date on all the session topics and interesting developments that take place during the conference itself. One of the great things about Twitter is that you are able to connect with so many people from different regions. Using Twitter as our platform for the ASC Echo Journal Club allows everyone who wants to participate the chance to do so. If you cannot attend a live session, you can always search the hashtag and participate when you are able. The ASC Echo Journal Club creates a discussion on a different journal article at each session. There may be some that you have a great deal of knowledge about and some that the topic is less familiar to you. The purpose of the club is to learn from each other and discuss the topic at hand. As a sonographer or a newcomer, you may be nervous to participate. I certainly was at the beginning, but I have seen that the ASC Echo Journal Club is an inclusive, encouraging, and engaging environment. Through this type of environment, you are able to network with other echo lovers from around the globe. This may lead to connections that may open doors for you in the future. Through participating in the Journal Club, you will learn things like pathology assessment, imaging tips and tricks, ergonomic tips, new research results, and so much more, which will help you to further your professional development. Participating in the chats will improve your confidence and give you a sense of belonging to the community. By participating in the event, either during the live portion or by searching the hashtag ASC Echo JC and reviewing at a more convenient time for you, you can earn a CME. Next, we will look at things that you can do to be more involved. Performing an echo is no easy task, but we as sonographers are conquering these studies day in and out. We will have some great pointers on how to achieve diagnostic quality results, even on some challenging patients. One of the most well-received tweets during the Journal Club are the imaging tips from sonographers. We are well-versed in telling the story of patient's anatomy and disease process and the best way to demonstrate it. So if you have a tip on how to optimize the image, view the apex better, preparation setup for imaging a baby, proper sample volume placement, patient positioning, etc., feel free to share your tip with the group. Another option is to ask a question. Are you curious about what you are seeing and want more information provided? Feel free to ask a question and open a discussion. Asking questions shows that you are actively engaged in trying to better yourself. This will allow you to converse with other participants and become acquainted with other echo enthusiasts and get your question answered by an echo expert. Other suggestions to being involved may include your personal experiences, quality improvement measures, or other concerns that you may have. As an astute sonographer, you are aware of items to take into consideration when performing an exam. These may include being familiar with the patient history, taking the patient vitals into account with serial study comparison, and what else non-cardiac wise is happening to the patient that may affect what you are seeing in the echo. There may be other factors affecting the quantification of severity of a disease process observed that are important to note. These are good experiences that can be shared. Training and lab habits that you have used to improve quality and reproducibility are great tidbits to share. Another possibility is starting a discussion to encourage other sonographers to take care of themselves and not suffer in silence. Still nervous to share your thoughts? Start small. An always popular tweet of the Journal Club are the echo cats and echo dogs that are participating alongside their owners. This is a good way to connect with some of the other members and begin to feel a part of the club. How networking on Twitter changed my life. Being involved in the ASC Echo Journal Club has connected me with other sonographers from around the world. It's amazing to have the opportunity to connect and learn from others from everywhere. Through my involvement with the Journal Club, I became acquainted with Gillian Wally, who is an amazing, inspirational sonographer from New Zealand. In April of 2020, she posted on Twitter, "Who wants to come to New Zealand? Looking for a cardiac sonographer." I sent her a message on Twitter, which led to us having a conversation on WhatsApp. I sent her my resume and she connected me with various people across New Zealand. I interviewed for 3 different hospitals, accepted a job at one of them, and made the big move across the world with my family in April of 2021. I now live in Auckland, New Zealand, and work at Starship Children's Hospital. I absolutely love being here, and it all came about from a tweet I saw on Twitter, from a connection I made through my involvement with the ASC activities and the ASC Echo Journal Club. As a sonographer, you may feel that you are not qualified to participate. that your comments or ideas will not be well received. I can tell you from experience that will not be the case. Sonographers see things from a different lens than the physicians do. You also have imaging secrets that can be shared. Tips and tricks, pathology evaluation, and physiology discussion from the sonographers is always appreciated and well received from the participants of the journal club. So please join the chat. You never know where a connection you make on Twitter will lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly, so much for providing your perspective. I mean, you truly embody how social media can help sonographers' professional development. I mean, in your case, it took you to the other side of the world for the lead sonographer position that you currently hold. So I'll have some questions for you at the end. But another aspect that we have to discuss and that ties into our journal club is the use of social media and visibility of research and editorial content. Our third speaker today is Dr. Jordan Strum. He is the Associate Director of the Echo Lab at Beth Israel in Boston, and I guess future Director. Congratulations, Dr. Strum.
Thank you.
He's a section head of cardiovascular imaging research and an assistant professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School. He is very active in research in health outcomes, cardiovascular imaging. He served numerous roles in the American Society of Echo. Notably, he was in the board of directors recently, and is the social media consultant for the Journal of the American Society of Echo. So he's going to tell us a little bit about the editorial perspective. Jordan?
Thank you so much, Enrique. And it's a real pleasure to be here and to share my perspective from a sort of editorial perspective on why to get involved and how to get involved, and why journals in particular are getting involved in the social media space. These are my disclosures. Most notably is the one on the bottom here, which is that along with Ritu, who is one of our co-panelists here as well, am a social media consultant for the Journal of the American Society of Echocardiography. And I can talk a little bit about that role at the end, but I want to sort of move on to some of the content. So we're going to first review some of the existing bibliometric and scientometric scores for measuring journal impact. We'll understand some of the critiques that have been leveled specifically against the most commonly used one of those metrics, which is journal impact factor, or impact factor for short. And then we'll evaluate the role of social media in influencing journal impact factor scores. We will also identify social media best practices for participating individuals, and hopefully we'll get some questions at the end about how we can best leverage social media to be able to really sort of highlight articles and science. So how do journals measure impact? Well, there are lots of different ways and metrics for measuring impact, one of which is, of course, total citations. That's sort of an overarching measure. The problem with total citations is that citations depends a little bit on how many articles you are publishing in your journal. So if you are a small journal and only publishing 3 or 4 articles a quarter or a month, you may not have as many citations, for instance, as a journal that's publishing thousands of articles in a very short amount of time. So impact factor, or journal impact factor, has been sort of the most widely utilized and discussed factor or metric for assessing editorial impacts. It's an annual index that's published by Clarivate's Web of Science in the Journal Citation Reports, which is essentially a database of citations by different journals that is proprietary to Clarivate. There are a number of sort of related metrics that sometimes are used. So one is, for example, the cited half-life. And that refers to the median age of articles cited for a given year. So to take that into more sort of a concrete example, if the half-life is 6 in 2022, then that means that half of all cited articles for in 2022 are from the prior 6 years. So it's essentially a measure of a different measure of citations. Immediacy index is the number of citations per articles published. So that does take into account somewhat the number of articles that are published, whereas impact factor takes into account articles in the prior 2 years. And then altmetrics there's a whole host of altmetrics, but altmetric scores are alternative metrics. That is, they integrate social media, the overall discussions around particular articles, online news, reference manager citations, et cetera. And so try to provide more of a holistic picture of the immediate impact of and the discussion around certain articles. And we know that altmetric scores do correlate with impact factor and citations down the road, but it is a relatively novel metric. And then site score is a sort of the equivalent or alternative to impact factor. It's published by Elsevier, and it's had started in 2016. It's based on the prior 4 years of citations, and as opposed to impact factor, which is based on the prior 2 years of citations. And it uses a different databases. It uses the Scopus database as opposed to the JCR. So what is impactor and how is it calculated? So this is the equation. You may have seen it beforehand. For some people, they bristle when they listen to this. But ultimately, impact factor for a given journal in 2022 is equal to the citations that they got within that given year, divided by the number of publications that they had in the prior 2 years. And so it is sort of a rolling average of or a sense of how much a given journal is being cited for the number of publications that they're putting out. So importantly, it depends on what goes in the numerator and what goes in the denominator here. And so what does impact factor count? Well, impact factor obviously counts original articles that are published. They do count review papers, and they count proceedings papers. There are other things that are not counted as publications in the denominator here, and that includes editorials, includes corrections, notes, retractions, or discussions. And we'll get to this a little bit, but that is one way in which journals seeking to sort of inflate their impact factor have used editorials and other sort of non-eligible articles to try to inflate the impact factor for their individual journal. And so getting to this, there have been some critiques of impact factor as an individual metric. One is it's hard to know how it applies across disciplines. So for example, in econometrics, there may be a different pattern of citations than you see within medicine, and so it's a little bit difficult to apply across disciplines. There could be gaming of the system, as I sort of referred to, and there are a number of ways in which journals could do this if they're seeking to inflate their impact factor. One is by including a large number of review articles. We know that review articles have a large number of citations that are very highly citable. And so that can ultimately, particularly if they're citing their own articles, that can increase the number of citations. So that increases the numerator. And then also limiting the citable items. So for example, things like editorials, and then journals can ultimately negotiate those or negotiate what gets included in that list. And that can ultimately influence the impact factor by a factor of almost 300%. Some journals seeking to inflate, trying to game the system could publish articles early in the year, so they have a more likelihood of getting cited in a given year. And then, like I said, reviewing articles citing a journal's own work. The really sort of really pernicious attempts to do this are sort of coercive citation, where an article or an author is told that they have to include certain citations for a given journal for it to be included as part of being published in that journal. And that's another way to inflate these. And ultimately, these are all getting at the idea that is impact factor a true or perfect metric of quality or of impact, and there may be some disconnect between the quality of a given journal and the articles published there and what's determined as the impact factor. The other is that there may be skewed distributions of citations, and just to underline this from this is from Not Nature and PLOS One, and you can see the number of papers in the thousands that are on the y-axis, and the number of citations, and you can see that for Nature, a few highly cited papers are really driving the citation count here. And so there can be somewhat different distributions, and that can also give a sort of unfair assessment of a given journal's impact. The JCR is not publicly available. It is available by subscription, but there are some issues about transparency and what goes into those metrics and how the impact factor is ultimately calculated through that. But ultimately, social media impact factor matters to journals, particularly sort of 5-year or average impact factor over the course of 5 years matters a lot, and it helps build a journal's brand and attract relevant and good submissions. And so how does social media ultimately influence this? And this is taken from a fantastic article by Ritu and others who are social media consultants for Circ Outcomes, and I really encourage you to read the work. It's really fantastic. But ultimately, there's another article that was published as an abstract in JAC in 2019 as a proceeding from one of the conferences, where 28 journals were analyzed. About 68% had a Twitter account, 50% had a social media editor. And journals with higher altmetric scores had more Twitter followers, tweets per year, and tweets by the editor-in-chief. So if you're a journal or if you are associated with a journal, there are ways in which you can leverage this to try to get and apply more impact to your underlying journal. Impact factor correlated with the number of followers of the social media account, and increased by about 0.291 in journals that were sending over 1,000 tweets per year. So being active as a journal, having an account, tweeting readily is a great way to bring visibility and attention to your work. And I think that really centers on why we can somehow broadcast good science that's getting out there so that people can read this and understand it and it can apply it in their practice. And of course, it influences news practice, it builds a brand, it increases the downloads and citations for work. It leads to faster dissemination. And it's really part of what got me into this is, as an investigator, I really wanted the things that I was publishing not to sit on the shelf, but really to be used in practice. It helps promote work. It translates knowledge to the public and patients who may be looking at these and reading it, and improves the reach to policymakers. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it attracts high quality, good submissions back into that journal going forward. So how and why can authors get involved? Well, we can start with the why. One is, although it's not a direct criterion for academic promotion, the extent to which your articles are cited as an investigator, as a faculty member, is often thought of and conceptualized in the so-called H-index. And I don't want to get into how this is computed, but this is one thing that academic promotion committees use to be able to assess how impactful a given author's work has been. The other is really disseminating content. It's really getting content out to who needs it at the point of care to really be able to direct care. It helps facilitate this online communication and debate. We all know a number of these where there are big trials that come out, or there are large articles that and stimulate an interesting debate. And then sometimes the debate is as important as the article itself. And so that kind of communication leads to advancement in science, and it really happens rapidly online. And it can help engage with scientists in both in the topic area, but also other topical areas. So you can leverage the ability of the social media and social media networks to call upon multiple different expertises from other people elsewhere, and to really generate ideas. And then ultimately promote advocacy for a given topic. You see evidence of disparities. Well, you want that evidence to be out there and to get to the people who are making policies and can help drive policy changes at a very high level. The how, it's the easiest thing to do is you'll see a lot of journals nowadays will ask for you to create a tweet. So as you're entering in your article into Editorial Manager or another submission site, it will say, can you create a tweet for this article? And I would encourage you to do that, because that is a really easy way for social media editors to really conceptualize and get the important content of your article and also get it out there very quickly. As Purvi mentioned, using tutorials is a really effective way to be able to highlight the important points and bring attention to the article. Using hashtags like Echo First help, or ASE Echo Journal Club really help to index these. And so you can look back and review papers on a given topic using images. So just having an image in your tweet increases about 2.5-fold the amount of dissemination. So really leverage the visual aspects of Twitter by getting it out there. Twitter has an amazing ability to be able to use polls. So you can get a sort of a representative, so to speak, poll from multiple different parts of the country, really in the matter of seconds to minutes. And then ultimately, and this is why we're here today, is participate in these Twitter journal clubs. It's a really great forum to understand how the authors did their work, what they were thinking about, and really ask questions of the experts. What are some do's and don'ts? I think some of this has already been reviewed, but you do want to write clearly. You do want to frame the question or problem in the article. The same kind of ethical rules apply to social media as they apply when you're writing an article. Keep the internal deliberations that you have confidential. Use those tweets and tutorials to engage, and use hashtags. Don't want to use too many hashtags, but use them selectively to emphasize or index a given tweet. Using a key figure or a graphical abstract that can convey the main message of a paper is a really good way to be able to get a message across in a very short amount of time. What you don't want to do is the opposite of all those things. So don't be ambiguous. Don't start with rhetorical questions. Don't air your dirty laundry. If you're misquoted or mistweeted, don't make it a public scene. Don't post the same version of the poll every single time. You have existing hashtags, use them, and then don't really make it don't present science in a novel science in a marketing fashion. Science needs to be balanced, and it needs to be balanced by multiple viewpoints. And so it's not meant to be marketing; it's meant to be science. So do participate in ASE Journal Club. Ask interesting questions of the expert and moderator. Incorporate informative graphics, and address learners of all different backgrounds and expertise. Remember, your not only your patients, but your trainees and others are really looking at you and trying to understand how best to interact. You don't want to antagonize individuals or overstep your authority. I think this goes without saying. You wouldn't want to do that in any environment. And I say to people, generally speaking, don't say anything on Twitter you wouldn't want to say in front of a 2,000 person lecture hall. So with that, this is my contact information and how to contact me. I encourage people to reach out, and thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you, Jordan. Those are very important topics on how social media is a serious way of increasing the visibility of one's research and publications in the journal. And thanks to your efforts and those of Ritu, who's our next speaker, to help promote the J's research. So, which gets us to our fourth speaker of the night. She needs very little introduction. Our fearless leader, creator, and founder of the ASE Twitter Journal Club, and former chair of the subgroup, whom I'm honored to take the baton this year. Dr. Ritu Thaman is an assistant professor of medicine at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. She has served numerous roles in the American Society of Echo, in addition to the Journal Club. She's a former ASE Board of Directors member. She is the chair of the ASE Women in Echocardiography group and the co-chair of the ASE Industry Roundtable. She's a social media consultant. She is a very prolific Twitter. I don't know how she has time or energy to put so much content, so much useful content on the spot. And we are so looking forward to hearing about the history of our journal club and how can people get engaged. Thank you, Ritu.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all the speakers who have been educating me and everyone on this webinar. They've been fantastic. And all of you I have met and gotten to be friends with through Twitter. So it speaks for itself. And surprisingly, I want to share this story, and it sort of reiterates everything that has already been said, but I'm just going to make it very concise. So how did it start and how's it going now? Everyone knows that meme. No disclosures. So once upon a time, in a day in 2017, this idea of a journal club that would be aired on Twitter was thought of by our past president, Swaminathan. But that idea was really not so foreign, and people didn't know what to think of it. And in fact, he had to present the first Twitter Echo Journal Club to the board of directors in the morning when they were convening. And at that time, we were rolling the journal club, during their meeting, just to show them what is actually possible. Well, that led to not only the start of this journal club, but it also led to this associated hashtag, Echo First, which all of us use. And the beauty of this is that you can go back and research this, and you can see that it's had an incredible growth. And the growth started in a very democratic way, because we decided, okay, we're going to ask, what's a way we can share this information around the world? And we did a Twitter poll, and Echo First won, and here we are. So we love this journal club for many reasons, but one of them is just that the fact is we can share this information with people. These are nodes that we published in JACE. This just shows that they're gatekeepers. They're people that just one person can then open the door to communities and share this information with people that otherwise wouldn't really have it. And so we bridge the distance, and we create communities in this way of spreading information. And we are very happy that we were the first, not only the first cardiology journal club, but we were the first one to offer CME. And as was said earlier, it's asynchronous learning. So you can come on at 8 to 9 tonight with us, but if you're busy, you can always come and search the hashtag or go on the website and look up what was said in the conversation. Of course, it's most fun just to be live and to participate. This was shared by Jordy already, but we have used this journal club, and it has expanded the role of social media editors in the way that is very key. In fact, at TCT last week, the FDA commissioner, Califf, said the number one problem that we have in the US certainly is science miscommunication. So all of us here have this role to play in communicating, and that is by communicating with each other and asking each other questions. So with that, I just have some practical tips for all of you who are going to participate or have participated. I was so happy to hear Kelly's news and be reminded of that fortuitous meeting. But use the hashtag. You can use it to search and then refresh, and always use the one that says latest, so you update. Follow the moderators and the authors. You can do search that way. If you have time, read the paper beforehand, but you don't have to. In fact, many times we will do a tutorial on the paper itself, some highlighting some key salient points. And Enrique just put one out yesterday, which is fantastic, on these guidelines that we're going to be discussing today. And I see that Dr. Sharif Nago is here in the audience. I'm so happy that he's here. You can think of some questions that you might have, but right in the moment, things may come up. All the time it happens where something that someone wrote will spark a question within you, and then you just are able to ask it live. It's helpful as a moderator, certainly, to have photos and GIFs or videos that you want to share, especially the last one, when you want to say thank you, or if you have ones that are your favorites and you like to use, keep them in a handy folder. Tag the moderators, the authors, your friends, anybody you think might be interested in the topic. And then always, here's the picture, refresh under latest. That's the best, because that'll bring you up current, and you have to keep refreshing this to keep yourself right at the top of the line of what's being said. And for those people who are shy, or not even shy, you just want to hang out, you just feel free to lurk. It's fine. Majority of people on Twitter, that's all they do is they lurk and they read other people's comments. So there's a whole variety of things you can do. So thank you. That's all I have. And I look forward to having any questions. I know that we already have some, so.
Thank you so much, Ritu. That was a fantastic overview and some really useful tips for those who might want to start getting involved with our journal club. Thank you for reminding us that we have the first journal club of the season tonight at 8 Eastern, 7 Central, on the new guideline for hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So we have a few minutes left, and I just want to circulate some questions, just an open question for all of you, sort of to your last point, Ritu. What tips would you give to someone who is either junior, like a fellow, or a sonographer perhaps, or perhaps very senior, the other opposite end of the spectrum, and unfamiliar with social media, or they may feel that this is a little fast-paced, a little overwhelming? How do you get to follow Journal Club, and how do you gauge?
That's a great question. I can tell you we had Roberto Lang as one of the first people, and Henna Patel, his fellow, was right with him. And, you know, sometimes it's just helpful to have a friend to help that's more familiar. I generally will always give my phone number out. And I've had the early journal clubs where I had people on the phone and I was just guiding them verbally as they were trying to make the tweets come forward. So rely on your friends and colleagues, and any of us here on this panel certainly would be willing to help anyone who has a question.
Kelly, what do you think about I mean, I love your slide about starting small. What advice would you give to sonographers that are interested in participating? How do you start?
I mean, I can definitely understand how people would be nervous about the whole process, but I think the environment is very encouraging, engaging, and everybody is just looking to grow and move themselves forward. And so even if you just have a small question, it's totally fine to just ask a question if you're afraid to kind of insert your own thoughts on things. Or just sharing. Yeah, the dogs and cats, I think, is a very good way to start if you're nervous. People really like that. So.
Absolutely. This is very, very casual. You don't have to chime if you don't want to. You can just follow the hashtag, which is on your screen, ASEchoJC, and just go to the most recent ones, as Ritu pointed out. So you can follow along, and maybe one day you will be participating. An important topic that was brought up by Purvi was privacy, confidentiality, and the proper use of social media. So I think that's something that I'd love everyone to comment a little bit on, especially if you also a sonographer, a fellow, someone who is excited about a case that they saw in their lab and they want to post about it. What are the things you have to do that correctly?
I can start since I kind of touched on it, but I would say this again. I know that we think that de-identification is enough, but it's not enough. So it's it's important to get consent and check with your institute what exactly is the institutional policy. As I said, our consent form that we have developed here, we have I think it's very forward thinking, because you can pull it up on your phone anywhere, and all patient has to do is just press on a dot and just put their initials, and it goes into iCloud, which remains with the hospital, so that if anyone comes after you, you're protected. So that's number one. Number two is almost never good to do the simultaneous publication. So if you're doing an extraordinary rare case today in the lab, do not post about it today, because everyone in the world would know, in the hospital at least knows about the case. And of course, in Echo Lab, it's kind of rare to, no one knows, but the diagnosis, most people on CCU, the nurses, etc., everyone would know about the diagnosis. So it's try to avoid the simultaneous publication, have those cases stored in an archive on your phone, and then publish later. And I would say that there are so many case report journals. If you really are really encouraged to just have that educational content on your social media, pick up a journal that is a case report journal. There are 3 major cardiovascular journals that are doing cases. Pick up a case. You can still digest it in your way, in your language, in a simpler form for the fellows, early career, or anyone to learn. So I think there's a lot of free content that is out there. Utilize it. Of course, give credit to the people where it belongs, but you can still utilize it to your advantage.
And I would extend that. I completely agree in that if you have a rare case, be careful not just tweeting it on the same day, but tweeting it in general, because the issue with rare cases, particularly if you give a lot of identifying information, is that it can be traced back. And if it's one of a kind, then that one person might be able to trace it back to themselves, and you have to think about it from that perspective. So if I post this, am I giving enough information that this person could somehow be traced back in some kind of way? And so, you can do everything you can to protect yourselves. It doesn't mean don't participate in the conversation. We want you to be participating. We want you to be sharing on Twitter, but just be careful about how you go about doing that.
And just to follow up, during COVID, all of us here relied on each other because we would see and share cases first here on Twitter before they were even published. And that was a real important part of the pandemic, teaching and learning for all of us. But now that we're post-pandemic, that we really have to be very mindful of the timing. But like, as Purvi was saying, if you can get consent, some patients, they want their cases to be out there because, again, you're helping teach the world, and somebody else might be saved by sharing that information. So
absolutely. No, those are excellent points. And first and foremost, know your institutional policy, because everybody's a little bit different. We are unfortunately out of time. We could have a longer discussion. It's a great idea for everybody that wants to get engaged to start tonight. We have our first ASC Twitter Journal Club starting at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. All you have to do is log into Twitter and find the hashtag ASC Echo Journal Club as shown on the screen. This event will be moderated by Dr. Parwani and Ritu Thaman here, and we'll have 2 of the guest authors, Dr. Dermot and Dr. Sharif Naga. Thank you so much for attending tonight. And we'll see you all in a few hours.